one of the topics that I thought would be really useful for everyone to hear about in self-actualization systems, YouTube, is this idea of if you're not happy, if you're not content, if you're not fulfilled right now, then you never will be. Because I have a lot of thoughts on this, so this will be probably more of a raw kind of insight chain. Buen dia. Sometimes you don't always get a reply when you say hi. It's not a big deal, guys. Remember, for those of you that are struggling with social anxiety. So if you feel like I just need to get to the next hurdle, I just need to get to the next hill, I need to get to the next destination, and then I will allow myself to be fulfilled, then I will allow myself to be happy, then I will allow myself to be blah, 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 right? All of this kind of good stuff, which I'm sure everyone watching this video will be able to relate to somewhat. You know, we've all been at that point, and maybe we still are at that point, and obviously there'll be different parts, there'll be different areas where we resonate with that more and more. So if this is you, probably the reason that you picked to choose to watch this video is that you can kind of tell that that's not the full package, so to say, because when you do reach that destination, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think suddenly your worldview, your system, your way of thinking is going to change? Right? You really think that's going to happen? You think your whole worldview is going to change just because you achieved some goal? No. The way of thinking needs to change. So there's two different ways that your mind can be constructing things, right? Or two ways that we can view the mind. One is through content, and the other is through process. So the process of thinking that if I achieve A, then I will be fulfilled. That's a process. That is a structure of how you're thinking. So it's a process, but it's also a structure. But we'll use structure because it's actually a better word. Sorry, I kind of forgot where I was going with that. So if the structure of your ego is, I just need to achieve X and then I will be Y internally satisfied or whatever it is. If that's the case, then no matter how much you achieve or how much you do or how much you grind, it will never be enough because the structure of your mind hasn't changed. The contents of it might have changed, like you might have 10K a month now, or you might have been learning this new stuff, or you might have learned this new cool thing about the relationships, and maybe you even have a relationship now and it's really loving and it's better than it was before. It might even be really wholesome, and you worked on your attachment style or whatever that kind of stuff is, but that's just the contents. You need to change the structure of how you think, of how you are constructing things in order to actually change as a person. Or you need both, really. Let's not be absolutist about it. So this is something which is kind of a little bit tricky for me to talk about, actually, because on one hand, it is a process of ego development, a process of developmental psychology. So it happens organically. Your ego matures whenever it's ready to mature. As you can tell, there's like no one out right now. It's quite cool. So if this is the thing, then on some ways you can't rush it. You can kind of go faster with the right mentors, with the right content. This content that I'm putting out right here will definitely help with that. But on one hand, you can't force it. You can't pressure anything to happen. However, what you can do is a lot of the time, if we have a belief that we just need to get over the next hill to allow ourselves to be happy, it can also be a belief thing. Shadow work, all that stuff that I talk about, internal healing, rewiring constructs. Constructs are just like the frameworks of how we live life, basically. So it's not necessarily a bad belief. Like a bad belief would be, let's say if I had social anxiety, it'd be bad for me to be talking outside like this, basically. That's like an introject or like a shadow. But I could just have the construct, like it's polite to not shout in the road. That's just like a construct. It's not necessarily something which is inhibiting my life. Okay, so with these constructs, you can make sure, what was I going to say with this actually? I lost my train of thought. I guess I'll have to cut this out. Damn, I have really lost my train of thought. Come on, Dr. Zarita. It's too early to get early onset dementia, but I guess you can never speak too soon. See, if that's a belief that you hold, right? I have to do this in order to be happy, then that's something that you can fix with really pointed shadow work. So there's an introjection, research your ego states, research your projections. But this is something which is very prevalent in today's society for whatever reason. And thought I'd share my thoughts on it. And you can always just reality check it too. Is there anything right now that you have achieved that you thought would make you permanently happy, lasting happiness? The answer to that is probably yes, right? If the answer is probably yes, then what is making you keep on buy into this illusion that is being continually propagated, by yourself? What I would encourage you to look at is what is making this continue. It's not like a static thing. It's a continuous cycle. We continuously buy in to our internal world. It's a continuous reciprocity almost. It's a continuous ecosystem. So if you can look and investigate, and not necessarily even the epistemology of how this came into view, although that's super useful, and I go into a lot of detail in my products and my one-on-one work, was actually in some ways the missing link that a lot of people miss, including myself when I first got into this stuff, is how we are sustaining our worldview, how we are sustaining our thoughts, our beliefs, our ego wants, our sense of self. If you look at the sustainment, sometimes that's a nudge in the right direction, that's a nudge in the direction when we weren't able to get any nudges for maybe years. So an example from my own personal life is I was always quite good at getting to the contents of something, like what it was, how it started, the epistemology too. And I would kind of sometimes get to the structure. This was before I had one of my big mentors in shadow work, Kim Barter, who has the most comprehensive meta system of shadow healing on the planet, pretty much, in my opinion. So this was before I understood the difference between structure and contents. But I could kind of get to the structure because this other modality, advanced conversational hypnotherapy by Scott Jansen, was very good at just doing, I think he was doing it intuitively. Also, this angle keeps on making me look like I don't have any hair, which is quite funny. I guess I am going bald in the future, so best to get it out in the open early, get ahead of the controversy. But it was something I was really terrible at doing, and that actually led to me continuing to have insights, or continuing to not have insights, despite working on issues which really, really plagued me throughout my early 20s, stuff around relationships, dating, but also just independence, not being codependent on other people, because I was a big extrovert, and a lot of the time I would build my sense of safety on others. Let's go down here. So that kind of stuff. When I started to look at the mind like an ecosystem, like the consciousness like an ecosystem, I started to see how I was sustaining certain things. So not just how it got there in the epistemology of how something started and how it got formed, but how is it continuing to stay there? What is allowing it? What is it that I'm doing? So then I actually added loads of empowerment onto me. At the first, it won't feel empowering. It'll feel like, I'm just blaming myself. It's my fault. This kind of stuff. Because that's why we don't own stuff about ourselves. We say, it's a part of us, or it's this, or it's that, right? When it's all of that, it can feel very overwhelming. But as soon as I was to realize that I had a direct part to play in whatever this thing is that was going on, that's when things shifted from 0 to 100. And I was able to stop sustaining it. And when something is stopped sustaining, then it atrophies and it can't grow anymore. This is the same thing that happens with neural pathways too. With neural pathways, the more we do something, the thicker the neural pathway becomes. So it's just easier for the electric impulse to travel through it. It's almost like a principle like Occam's razor in philosophy. Whatever's the easiest, people will just do. Well, it's kind of the same with your mind. Whatever is the easiest path or the thickest line, then that electric impulse will just go down it, basically. So if you can atrophy those neural pathways and form new ones, because those impulses have to go somewhere, if we can do that, then that is how we can change ourselves from the ground up, basically. Wendy? Damn, I'm 0 for 2. I'm 0 for 2. 2 people, Wendy. No response. I'll just go out and cry in my basement, huh? I'm only joking around with you guys. You know, it can sometimes feel like that at the beginning when you say hi to people if you have social anxiety. So we can look at it in 3 ways now, right? Now that this rambling is getting somewhere more concise, which is you can look at the contents, the structure, and how you're sustaining it, okay? So to come back to the original point, which is if you're not happy now, you never will be. If you can look at what is sustaining, what is the structure, what is the contents of that belief, and the epistemology of it, or the epistemology of that worldview, it will deconstruct naturally. You do not have to push with this, okay? If you push with this, you'll just fuck up your progress because you can't realize something before you're ready, basically. You can set up the causes and conditions, you can set up the karma, you can do all of this kind of stuff. You can, to make sure that when the time is right, first of all, that time will become much, much more likely to happen, and it happens a little bit faster. But you just set up your causes and conditions and your karma to make sure that when you are ready, you don't miss your opportunity, basically. So I guess that's my thoughts on that. I guess I kind of answered that question, I kind of didn't. Instead, like I always do, I go off on a tangent and I talk about what's actually on my mind, basically, which is something which is good and bad. You get a lot of extra content about stuff, but it's also not necessarily the most concise, so we'll see how this goes. But yeah, this is one of those insight chains. It's an insight which I've been working on, delivering, making sure that clients get it. Because when clients get this, then suddenly they can enjoy what's happening actually right now. And when you can enjoy what's happening right now, you become much more effective. That's the funny thing. You become much better at doing whatever you need to do. Because when you're in enjoyment, when you're in a sense of play, you learn faster, you are more productive, you can push for harder, you can do all of this extra stuff. So not only does it make you just enjoy the moment more, it makes those goals that you want to achieve, right? That, oh, if I just achieve A, then I'll become B. The whole thing that we started with, it makes that much, much more likely to happen too, right? We can think that sometimes we're holding ourselves back, like, oh yeah, the reason why I'm not allowing myself to be happy because it puts me in that pain zone or whatever. It's kind of true, right? I've definitely had situations like that when I was moved to Thailand with €300 coming in every month and I had to make closes. I wouldn't say it was an unstressful experience. I wouldn't say I was suffering a great deal, but it was definitely not a non-stressful experience. We think it can be useful, which it can be useful, but in small bursts as a long-term strategy, as long-term. Hola. See, no reply. It's tough out here, guys. When you think that by holding that back, basically, you think you're going to get to the place more because you're like, oh, if I just deprive myself, then that gives me extra motivation. Well, if that's the only motivation you can get, and you're a adjusted person, not somebody who is like depressed lying in bed and he really can't do anything, then you might need to just do something, right? If you're an adjusted person, you've done a few things, it's just there's a few goals which seem to be out of your grasp. If that's the only way that's motivating you, you need to find a new way to motivate yourself, because over time it's not something which is sustainable. And also, do you even really want it that much? If the only way you can motivate yourself is through pain and suffering, I would argue that that is probably not the best direction for you to go into. But again, I don't know who you are, so I don't want to make massive presumptions or projections. So I guess this is the third conclusion of a 16-minute video. I keep on saying to conclude and then having extra thoughts, basically. And, oh no, that's down here. It's okay. Hopefully by now we've outlined, we have the overview of what causes this, the different causes it. We don't ever want to be in a super absolutist worldview. There's always multiple causes to different things. Once we see the cause, whether it's just an ego development thing, and we're actually doing it in quite a healthy way, because there is healthy ways to be in the achievement paradigm. The way that I'm presenting right now is the way which is probably not traditionally seen as the most integrated way, because you're motivating yourself through deprivation, basically. But if you're at a really healthy achiever stage, you can really enjoy your life and just love the feeling of crushing it, love the feeling of just going out and doing stuff without having any of this withdrawal into yourself, all that kind of stuff. So there's different ways that can happen. Once we identify the different ways, obviously there's the shadow work stuff. I have my free product, Most Practical Guide to Shadow Work on the Internet. You just have to sign up your email. It's a 3-hour product, which I do with my one-on-one clients, so I don't hold anything back. Basically, it gives you the exact framework that I use to help create breakthroughs from clients, to help them get out of years or even decades-long slumps. There's all that kind of stuff, but then the main meat and potatoes of this video is it contents, is it process or structure, and then how am I sustaining it? Look at those three. One of those three links will come more easy to you. I was about to cross over the road there, but I didn't really fancy getting hit by this car, so that was a no from me. So once you identify which of those three kind of pillars, you can almost look at it like a stool, right? Has 3 legs. Whichever one is the most wobbly, you just knock that out from underneath you. And then see, as the final part, what difference is that making to your consciousness? What difference is that making to your experience of life? And then there's a little bonus for those that have stayed around from this kind of rambling, more insighty style video. Here's a bonus which I actually got from my mentor Pierre ages ago when we were living in Budapest, maybe like 2 years ago or something. And it was this basically. It was, remember, you can always, actually no, I think it was in Chiang Mai, Thailand. You can always tell your mind, because sometimes your mind can be like, oh, but what happens if I adopt this new worldview and I can't achieve anything ever again in my life? You know, sometimes it can catastrophize like that. Well, you can humor your mind and you can say, oh, but I can just write down everything, all the different intricacies of this belief state or whatever it is. So it's not going anywhere. The knowledge, this worldview is not going anywhere. We can just try as an experiment to try this new way, where I can enjoy where I am and motivate myself with passion, healthy desire, and enthusiasm, rather than fear, anxiety, and stress. And that will relax your mind, because your mind will be like, oh yeah, I can do that. There's an illusion. You can never not go back to the old way, because sometimes we have to work a little bit with our mind if it's something that is new. This is the place I ate tacos in yesterday when there was no food in Guadalajara, basically. And yeah, that's the insight chain. Okay, so I actually do have a second part to this, which is, if you feel like this is you, if you feel like this is something which really affects you and it's annoying, we need to make sure that we are not doing this work to avoid that part. Okay? Instead, what we need to do is come from a place of full, radical self-acceptance. This is a principle I get from Carl Rogers, one of the most influential human-centered therapists out there, or therapists in general. I really recommend you go check out his work. But he said something in his book on becoming a person, which is something which I think if more people understood, including myself earlier, obviously, I didn't understand this intuitively. Let's not make any mistake about that. It would just 10x their process in self-actualization, self-integration, self-liberation, all of this kind of internal, this new form of inner work, which is really sprouting up and starting to get traction in the world, which is obviously what my channel was all about, which is the more radical and the more total your acceptance of yourself, the easier it is to change who you are. So we don't want to be in denial or fight against this thing, fight against ourselves, fight against the reality. Like maybe we are just in that paradigm where we feel like we really need to crush things, and if we can't, then we don't deserve love, or all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying we don't change that, but we come with a full acceptance of, yep, that's where I am, and I still love myself. I hold myself accountable, and it's because of that love for myself that I'm holding myself accountable, that I have values, that I have integrity, that I'm holding myself accountable to all of these things, okay? Not coming from a place of trying to distance itself. I lost so much progress. Guys, I don't have to tell you how much progress I lost in terms of just like years of feeling like I could never actually admit or own up to how big of a problem something was. Not in terms of like relationships with people. I was actually quite good at owning up to my mistakes there. But for myself, like let's say I realized I had a belief that I was socially anxious, for example, right? Which I was in the beginning. I felt that if I admitted that, then I would cement that reality and it would become true even more than it was. If I had this principle from Carl Rogers before, well then, you know, I would have crushed through that a lot more, because first of all, you can't resist the reality. It's like there's a tree here, right? No matter how much I deny that the tree is there, it's still there. And if I deny it so much that I can walk into, that I can deny it so much that I can walk into it because I've said it's not there, but it is there. So I have to do something about that. I have to accept it. So first of all, it's an exercise in futility. Second of all, any kind of resistance just takes a lot of systemic energy from inside of you. You know, you only have a finite amount of energy. We also only have a finite amount of willpower. If some of that is being used to resist something which is so obvious, like the tree is there, then it's just a misallocation of resources, and it just takes so much time, you know. Hola, buen día.
Yes.
Someone finally said it back to me. I feel complete now. Estoy contento. Mi corazón es feliz. All of that kind of stuff. So, to conclude, we do not want to be resisting ourselves. We don't want to use this as an example to not give ourselves the proper love, acceptance, reassurance. If we do that, then everything will be smooth.